Sheldon Cooper of Young Sheldon, a cultural study. Who is Sheldon Cooper? Sheldon Cooper is the main character on TV show Young Sheldon. It takes place in the late 1980s up until the early middle 1990s. It is about a 9-year-old boy who is enrolled as a high school freshman in a small town in Medford, Texas. He is raised Southern Baptist and he is a traditional American family with mother, father, brother, and sister. His family dynamics consist of his mother, Mary, who is a devout Southern Baptist Christian, and she is the heart of the family, who is constantly nurturing the family. Then you have the father, George Sr., and he is the local high school football coach, and he's the backbone of the family. He provides financial support for the family, and he often has a hands-off approach unless it's necessary to step in. And then you've got brother George Jr., and he is a typical ninth grader. He plays on his father's football team, and he's not too happy that Sheldon is in his class. And then you have his sister, Missy, who is Sheldon's fraternal sister, who is a little bit self-absorbed and is often ashamed of him. And then you have the street smart grandma, also known as Mima. She does not meet your stereotypical Southern Baptist lady. To give you Sheldon's background story, he is a 9-year-old child prodigy who is from the small town of Bedford, Texas. He was raised in a traditional family, which included mom, dad, brother, sister, and grandma. And because of his intelligence, he was promoted to the ninth grade, being in his brother George's class. Now, the first day of school for poor Sheldon, he is a rule follower. So, to be prepared, he read the Code of Conduct. And due to his cultural upbringing, the first thing he wants to do is call out people who are breaking the rules. This would include teachers, students, and other administration. However, even though he was brought up the Southern Baptist faith, he is considered an outsider because often he is very outspoken that he does not believe in God, but he rather believes in science. Now we are going to discuss the theories that pertain to poor Sheldon. The first theory we are going to discuss is the elements of social identity theory, also known as SIT. With this theory of group and group relations that assert that group influence their members with self-confidence and self-esteem, particularly when individuals categorize themselves as group members and identify with that particular group. Now, this study was originally conducted by Tajil and Turner back in 1986. The different elements of the social identity theory. They like to categorize people in social groups. Please ourselves with these social groups. And it motivates to compare our group to other groups. Therefore, it creates competition. Cultural influences and concepts of self and personality. The cultural influences from his family and church shaped Sheldon's value system. For example, when he was playing a game of poker with Meemaw, as you can see in this picture, his grandmother lied to him about what was in her hand of poker. She pretty much kind of said that by her having a sad face, that demonstrated that she had a bad hand. But what she was trying to teach him was poker face. So when Sheldon laid his cards down, he was really happy because he thought he had a great hand. But he was really upset with his grandmother when she laid her hand down. Even though he was deceived by her sad face, it turned out that she had a better hand. So when this happened, he called her out and said she was lying. And she replied she was bluffing. This is an example how the church and family shaped his value system. For Sheldon's sick categories, first of all, but his belonging. He was part of the Bible Belt in East Texas. His purpose was to be truthful and to change the world with his knowledge. His self-worth was achieving academic knowledge. Continuing with his SIT categories, with his intelligence, his identity, he feels comfortable associating with people who have high IQs. More often or not, the people that he associates are considerably older than he is. For his in-group and outer group, I would say that Sheldon is considered outer group. Unlike his culture where they worship God, he did not believe in God. An example of this, when he was in church, he raised his hand and told the congregation that he did not believe in God, but rather science. And he challenged the pastor by doing so. Kohlberg's theory of moral development. It is a stage theory that is based on an evolutionist perspective, which is based on how people reason through an ethical dilemma based on the work on Jean Piaget, which studied cognitive states such as sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Unlike Piaget, Kohlberg was less interested in how, but he would rather answer the dilemma and was much more interested in knowing the why. Cultural differences, work values, and related intercultural conflicts in organization. Now, unlike other theories, Kohlberg approached this with a universal stage approach, not based on specific cultures, but rather kind of around someone's age. Just note that not everyone reaches a post-conventional stage. Now, with Sheldon at age 9, he's actually at a stage 4. Now, a stage 4 behavior is driven by obeying authority and conforming to social order. His comfort level is based on following the rules. An example of this, on his first day of high school, due to his due diligence of reading and following the handbook, he called out people for breaking the dress rule codes, and he was really upset because they were breaking the rules. Another demonstration of his theory were his high school freshman classmates. Now they were at a stage 5. Their social behavior is driven by a balance of social order and individual rights. And their comfort level is to be able to critically think for the greater good. Now, example of this, the average high school freshman is usually typically around 14 years old, and this is where they do rank at a stage 5. Social behavior is driven by a balance of social order and individual rights. Now, this is illustrated by them rebelling against the school handbooks with their dress codes. Now, with this slide, I'm actually going to make a comparison between the different stages. Because Sheldon was at a stage 4, his level to follow rules conflicted with the average high school classmates of stage 5, where they like to express themselves and think independently. So therefore, this kind of created a little conflict between the two stages. And the last theory that I'm going to discuss is Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory. Now, this is based on 6 dimensions of personality traits. This includes power distance, individualism and versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance index, long-term versus short-term orientation, indulgence versus restraint. Now, power index, someone who has a higher power index, they tend to respect rank a little bit more. They, with someone with low, they think everybody is equal. With individualism versus collectivism, individualism thinks what is good for me versus collectivism is what is good for the community. An example of this for individualism, most Americans and European countries are lot what's in it for me, especially in the United States. Now, collectivism, we can actually see that in the Asian the Asian culture, such as Japan, and they rather humble themselves and put the community first. Now, masculinity versus femininity. Well, masculinity is very, of course, masculine being male. It's very male driven. If you're high on that trait, you want to lead, you want to take control, you want to pretty much drive. Now, versus femininity, they tend to want to nurture and take care of the family holistically, usually kind of like the mother role. One nation of masculinity, I would say, would be the United States. We kind of rank in the middle. Whereas femininity, I would say the ranking high is actually in the Netherlands. Uncertainty avoidance index. A lot of people with uncertainty avoidance, they do not want to, if you have someone who is high in it, they want to make sure they kind of control and not have anything have happenstance. Whereas if it's low, they'll just take it as it goes and just kind of go with the flow. Long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. Long-term orientation plans long-term. Short-term invitation, they go with the flow. Indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence is where people would want to indulge their their um their desires. With restraint, they kind of hold off on it. Now, based on understanding cultural values, this shapes behaviors in societies and cultures. As I said before, a great example is the Japanese versus Americans. The purpose of this theory was to help understand and communicate among various cultures. And cultural differences in gender and sex roles and the universality of gender-specific behavior patterns across cultures. For the masculine, they tend to be ambitious, performance, and competition-driven. You can see that with the illustration with the businessman on the left-hand side, and with femininity, it is usually the relationship, quality of life, cooperation, and modesty driven. Now, Sheldon's traits. It is high on the masculinity. Sheldon's environment is driven by competition. This can be illustrated by his brother and his father's love for football and the competition for gain. Also, Sheldon, who likes to be right, is his form of competition. Excelling academically is his ambition. Now, in regards to male leadership, with his mother's Southern Baptist faith, it does not permit women to be pastors and or leaders in her church. Part of the other traits is individualistic. It is high. With Sheldon's Texas culture, they tend to rank high on the individualists due to their independence and competitive spirit. They also have high power and high. Because of his culture is predominantly Baptist, the majority of the citizens believe that God is the higher power, and the respect of authority is a cultural norm. Interaction with diverse cultures. What are the guidelines for being respectful in interaction with these cultures? Now, within this community, even though they did not understand, they tend to be respectful of their differences. An example of this, when Sheldon invited his friend Tam for dinner, his Vietnamese friend, his mom asked him about his culture. So she was trying to be accommodating, but inadvertently, what she was actually kind of rude and offensive. So when talking about the Vietnam War, Tam was referring it to the American War. And Sheldon's mom kept saying, correcting him, saying, oh, it's the Vietnam War. Also, when Tam's family moved to Galveston, his mom automatically assumed that the United States was a blessing and a dream until Tam stated that his family was assaulted by the KKK in Galveston. As you guys can see, that Sheldon Cooper is a very, very fascinating character. Now, his story can be seen also on The Big Bang Theory as an adult, and we did not address those issues here. But today we did discuss his issues on 3 different theories, and that was the social identity theory, the SIT, Kohlberg's theory of moral development, and Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.